Has an illness sidelined your career? Tune in to today's episode where I talk to Dr. Edward, the healing vet, and we talk about his pivot from veterinarian to an online course called the Whole Energy Body Balance Method for cats, dogs, and other animals. He was forced to make a change after having an illness, and now he has a thriving online course. We'll talk about what he did and how he does it. Hello, dreamers. Welcome to the Late Starters Club, giving you the inspiration, mindset, and tools you need to start something midlife and beyond. Remember, it's never too late to follow your dreams. Hello, late starters. It's your host, Andrea Vall, and I am joined today by Dr. Edward, the healing vet. And I am going to pronounce his last name a little bit later when I get a little more confidence.
Yeah,
Bassingthwaighte.
it's not the easiest name in the world to pronounce or spell, that's for sure.
Yes, yes. So welcome to the show, Dr. Edward. We'll just call you that.
Yeah, you can just call me Ed or Edward, that's all
Yes, of course, of course. So I am super excited to have you on the show because I think you have such a great story and we've worked together. It feels like longer, but we were talking just before we started recording. We've been working together for 4 years. I've been helping him with his Facebook ads as he has taken his vet business all virtual and online. I don't know if it's all virtual, but it's like a really great component of it is online, which you wouldn't think you'd be able to do with a
Yeah,
vet business.
yeah, well, it's not precisely the holistic, integrative, intuitive veterinary work that is the online business. The online business is my second brand, which is Whole Energy Body Balance Method,
Yep.
which is a profoundly healing modality for working with pets, with people, and with horses. There's a very strong component of somatic awareness and connection to natural energy flows through the body. The two real pillars of what we do, number one is neuro-fascial bodywork for helping find and relieve hidden soft tissue pain, anxiety, and trauma. And the second one is high level development of intuitive perception and energy healing.
That's awesome. And I know you have helped so many pet owners help their pets get out of this pain that they don't even know exists, right? That's your whole mission is to kind of relieve this pain in pets.
Absolutely. Silent pain or chronic soft tissue pain is often present in animals, and they often show no sign that the humans can see of it. So about every second animal I see is in that category. We've we've had over 3,500 people join our online training so far, and we're looking to basically get the whole veterinary industry to wake up to this problem that they're
Yeah.
completely blind to as well.
Yeah, yeah, and that I love that because I think that is people aren't always in tune with those alternative, uh, and healing techniques that are out there, and it's great that you're bringing such awareness to that. I should have asked you to find out before we came on, but I know it's gotta be, like, hundreds of thousands of people who have been through your webinars and your training, your online training, because I know because 'cause I've watched you all those people on your webinars as we've helped
You've been
drive
helpers
the ads.
with the ads for those, yeah. I think we just did our 90th one. I think we've had probably 1,000 or more people register for just about every one.
Right,
Of
right.
course, you don't get quite so many of them actually turn up and show up and watch
Yes,
it, but
sure,
I
sure.
imagine maybe 4 or 500 by 90
Yeah.
who've probably watched that, which is quite a lot, right?
Yeah, that's amazing. That's awesome. Well, I'm so glad you're getting the word out there. And I want to dive a little bit into your journey. Like, how did you go from vet to the work you're doing now and then just decide you wanted to take that online?
Well, it's a good question, and it's a bit of a long story, so I'll keep it nice and snappy because I know it's not the longest podcast.
I-
So, I grew up on a cattle property or a ranch for all you Americans in the north of Australia here. So, I was working with animals from a very early age. Now, unfortunately, animals weren't treated terribly well in terms of how they were trained. There was a lot of force, fear-based stuff going on, which initially I just did because that's what I was taught.
Right.
Then I came across the work of Monty Roberts and his book, The Man Who Listens to Horses. And I realized, holy wow, I can learn how to communicate with animals so they want to work with me and I don't have to be mean to them. So that was
Mm,
probably the first big step out of that kind of conservative old school way of thinking and into the more holistic, meeting animals as living, thinking, feeling beings and building relationships with them.
mhm,
And about a year and a half after I graduated, I ran across a horse vet who worked on horses' necks. He would take horses that had a forelimb lameness that they could not find a reason for, and he would work on the necks, and the lameness would go away. So it's from nerve root compression.
wow,
Now, this was fascinating to me because they'd never taught me anything about that at university, I can promise you.
right, yeah,
So then I immediately thought, well, what about dogs and cats? They've got necks and backs. And I started exploring more deeply with my palpation into their bodies and very quickly found a whole lot of pain, tension, and
mhm,
dysfunction. Or I went looking for it, I didn't know it was there. Now, there were no modalities available then to train in for hands-on work with animals. So I just started playing around with using pressure and movement to see if I could unlock the pain and tension. And pretty quickly started seeing animals show beautiful responses to that. Now, I've been doing that for the 26 years, just trying things, seeing what works. If it works, I try it again. Oh, it keeps working. Then I'll
mm,
formulate it into a skill that I can teach. A couple of years after I first started working hands on with animals, I became really unwell with what I thought was chronic fatigue syndrome. And what I didn't realize until about 7 years ago was Lyme disease as well, which meant that I couldn't work at all for a number of years. And I had 15 plus years after that where I was significantly handicapped in terms of running at maybe 60% of what a healthy
mm,
person would run at. And in my healing journey, that's where I explored energy healing because it was one of the few things that gave me relief. Western medicine ran out of answers awfully quick. They say
mhm,
you've got a syndrome, it means they don't know what's going on, pretty
yeah,
much. So that's where I explored energy healing. And I also had a lot of people work with me hands on because I had a lot of pain and tension in my body. And I learned a tremendous amount from having really skilled practitioners work with me.
mhm. Yeah, that's awesome. That is great. And then I want to talk a little bit about how at age we were just figuring this out, age 41, took this all online, this teaching and
Yep.
this training for people to help their own animals and pets. It was really fun. It's been amazing to watch you. I will say that as well because you're so dedicated to really learning, diving in, getting it done. I remember when we first connected, I said, "You should do a webinar," and you're like,
Oh,
"Huh?"
never done that before. Let's schedule the first one. We did a webinar. It's like,
And you just got in and did it. You had never done a webinar before. You didn't know really what to
I
do, and we started out with I think it was
you
Zoom
you
webinars.
you gave me a little bit of advice about how to
Yeah,
do a webinar.
you
And
just
that
went with
webinar,
it.
it worked right out of the box back in the good old days when Facebook advertising was easy, and we were getting ROI of 5 or 6 out of the
Yeah,
box. It was really super exciting
yeah,
and amazing.
yeah.
We don't seem to get that ROI these days, but we're still doing all
It's
right.
a little more challenging. Well, you've also scaled your business up to a huge amount, which is amazing and wonderful as well. I think that's what happens as you scale, you get not necessarily quite the same, but we were getting pretty cheap leads, webinar leads at that
I think
point back
I
in the
think
day.
we started off getting leads at $1.50
I think it
Australian.
was. Yeah, for a webinar is pretty amazing, but we're not too far off now, but we're still
No,
back
better than last
yeah,
year.
yeah, yeah. So that's just great. I love that you dove in, and the other thing that's amazing to me is just your dedication to continuing to learn the process. I know you've done some different courses on how to improve your sales techniques, how to, because that's a whole thing too,
Yeah,
because,
yeah,
learning all that.
so I've made at a couple of points in my business really scarily large investments that have got bigger as my business has grown.
Mhm.
One of the first biggest scary investments was paying for ads with you. It's like, holy wow, I have never spent that much money on anything in my business ever before, and I'm terrified. And a few years later, I did a year-long intensive business mentoring program with Rachel and Data Gruber. Again, it was, whoa, can I
Yeah,
really spend that much money on something?
right, right.
And, when I did, it made me 10 times as much as I
Yeah.
invested in. And right now, I'm working with Peaceful Profits to write a whole new book funnel, which
Mhm.
hopefully is gonna scale our business to 2 or 3 or 5 or 10 times what we're doing now over the
Yeah.
next year. So
Yeah, And that's the other thing that I think that's been amazing with you as well is that not only have you been super consistent with doing your webinars, you're doing them live every 2 weeks typically. You take some time off here and there, but you're doing them really, really consistently and learning all very, really consistently, making these improvements that improve your bottom line. But you're also putting yourself out there in bigger ways. You had the TEDx talk recently.
Mhm.
You are writing books, so you're thinking of new ways to reach new people, and I think that's awesome.
Yeah, I'm really committed to excellence in everything that I do, and I'm also kinda Aspie. In fact, I'm
Mm.
extremely Aspie, and I don't seem to be terribly Aspie or on the spectrum these days because I've learnt a whole lot of ways to interact with normal people. So that gives me a kind of an intensity and focus and a whole lot of healthy obsessions that
Mm,
help.
yeah.
But the Japanese concept of Kaizen, which
Mhm,
is your incremental improvement in everything
mhm,
you do and having your whole team on board to do that, I think is really good. One of the things that I do is that I have a morning practice, 5 mornings a week, where my alarm goes off at 5:30 or 6. I spend an hour in bed with the timer going off every 5 minutes to stop me going back to sleep, where I do meditative and energy practices with
mm,
myself. Then I get up, have a shower, I go out and I do some resistance exercise. So I either do push-ups and chin-ups and dips some days, or I've got kettlebells where I do resistance exercise on. When I started off, I was flat out doing 5 push-ups and I had to stand on a stool to do 1
mm.
chin-up. Now I can do sets of between 50 and 60 push-ups and up to 10 chin-ups. So
Awesome.
I think another thing that if anyone's listening out there, one of these things is just start doing stuff. Do it to the best of your ability and then slowly stretch your ability over time. But this morning practice, I think, has been the foundation of 90% of the reason for my success and growth in my life and business because it makes me strong. And after I've done the resistance exercise, I do Qigong practices, forms for another half an hour, depending on the day.
That's awesome. That sounds like a great way to start your day. Sounds incredible.
Yeah.
So
I don't enjoy it. I hate getting out of bed. And often it's like, "Oh, push up. Really?" But I have another philosophy in my life that's hard now, easy later. You do the
Mm,
hard things now and you get all these rewards,
mm.
but often you don't get the rewards for months or longer.
Yeah,
So you've got to get through that, what they call the valley of despair. You know, you start a new habit and you think you should get a nice 45-degree straight line improvement. But what happens is you get a long lead time, then it curves up. So you've got to get through the valley of despair with a lot of these things.
right, right. That's great. I love that. Hard now, easy later. That's so cool. I haven't heard that before, but I love it.
Really? There you go.
Yeah, I know. I feel like, it's that's why I love these interviews is I find these things that people know that I don't know that are amazing and I'm like and then I see it everywhere.
Yeah.
But I love
But
that.
but but you too. I mean, I see you on your socials, and I see that you've got quite a strength practice where
Yeah,
you do a
I
whole
do.
lot of work with your body, and I think, you gotta do it. You gotta be
Oh, it's
strong and
huge.
well, otherwise you got nothing to work with in your life.
Right. It's huge. And I think it's huge for energy. People don't realize how much
Oh,
energy it
yeah.
actually gives you instead of takes away. People think, oh, I can't, I'm too tired to work out. No, that's exactly when you need to work out.
If you haven't worked out, I gotta tell you, you're in for a week or a month of pain,
There's a long valley of despair there.
but you'll get through it, and then you'll start going, "Wow, I feel vital and
Yeah.
strong." And all that also then shows up in your relationships and your boundaries, how you show up in business and confidence and on
Yeah.
screen and on stage and all that sort of stuff.
Yeah, for sure, for sure. It affects everything. So that's great. So along the way, along this journey of, and I definitely also want to circle back to your music as well, but along the way of launching this thing out into the metaverse, whatever we're calling it, into the ethers here, what obstacles have you come up against and how did you push through some of these obstacles?
Okay, so I had a number of obstacles. I had some addictions that I had to overcome, which were kind of in response to early childhood trauma. You know, my mum, bless her, and my grandma, I got some fairly narcissistic kind of patterns of behavior. Boarding school was really, really tough for me, being half the size of everyone in the year below me, highly intelligent and absolutely useless at playing any kind of sport. It's not really a good look when you go to boarding school like that. I think the whole chronic fatigue Lyme thing has been one of the huge challenges in my life, but it's
Mhm.
also been fertile ground that's led to the creation of most of what I teach. So it's kind of, is it good? Is it bad? I don't
Right.
know. Unhealthy entitlement has been a barrier for me in the past because I was the eldest son on a generational uh, cattle property farm
Mhm.
in the fifth or sixth generation. So I was kind of like the golden child, and that comes with its a whole lot of stuff that's less than healthy. But I found too that if you can flip that into healthy entitlement, my partner's gone gone, wow. I mean, we just started teaching the whole energy body balance for humans last year, and we've gone through our second cycle of live sessions for that this year. My partner and I were doing an intensive relational online live thing with some people. And on the second session, I was sitting there and I had extreme discomfort throughout all of my physical and energy systems. I was getting triggered to here and there and back again. So I just started playing around with doing a thing called a positional release over the energy centers in my body. And I thought, oh, wow, that feels great. So I created a whole new energy healing process. The next day, I ran through it and practiced it with my partner. And the next week, I taught it. Now, most people would think that is insane, right? But if I've got something, teach it, get it out there, learn
Yeah.
how to do it by teaching it. If you're sitting on something or thinking about doing a training or a thing, set a date, put it on Facebook, get some people to come along, and then you got to do it,
Yeah.
right? And this is something that you've said about me is that I just do stuff. And if it doesn't work, I'll do it again until it does.
And that's like with anything. Obviously, that first webinar you did way back 4 years ago wasn't perfect by any means, but my whole philosophy is done is better than perfect and you get better. And especially teaching, I think sometimes we get in our head like we have to be the expert or we have to know everything, and that's absolutely not true. What we have to have is something that we're excited about sharing and
Yeah.
that we can we can definitely teach about it and help people, and you just have to have done it once, apparently. Twice, maybe.
Well, with
No,
that,
that's not.
that also came from 20 years of intense
Yes, exactly,
study,
exactly.
practice in this field, right?
Yes,
So
exactly.
I
I'm
think having deep lived experience is
right.
incredibly valuable, but there's a lot of people with deep and lived experience who think, "Oh, I just have to do this other course and I have to get this
Right.
qualification, and when I've got that one, I need to do another one as well because I can't do it until I've done 500 things."
Yeah.
And that's where having some healthy entitlement, like, guess what? I'm amazing. I'm gonna go out there and do good stuff,
Yeah.
but not in an arrogant way. Sharing what works for you, for me, is how I teach.
I think enthusiasm and excitement is a huge part of it, right? You're excited about sharing it and want to get that message out.
Yeah.
So I do want to get back to your music. Now, you have also come back to performing and recording and writing music among all the other things you're doing, and you're going to get an album out there, right?
Yeah, the studio has been booked for the 25th and 26th of March. We're going into an all analog. We're going to be live in there, a little group of four of us, me, Alex Burkoy, who's just a multi instrumental wizard who I've been playing with for quite a number of years, and working with a producer and a bass player and a lead player, which is exciting and terrifying. So yeah, music's been a huge part of my life. When I was at school, I sang in the choir. I was in the school band, played trombone. And when I was 21, I bought myself a guitar. And I've been probably singing, writing, and performing for 20 years plus. The chronic fatigue put me out of action. I didn't sing at all for maybe 2 or 3 years. I had to totally rebuild my voice. And 6 or 7 years ago, when I first started working with Judy Rodman, who's an amazing vocal coach from Nashville in the States, man, I hardly had a voice, and if I did perform and sing, 4 or 5 songs, it'd just about put me in bed for 2 or 3 days.
Yeah. Well, that's amazing that you're coming back to it. That's great. That is
Yeah.
awesome, and we'll have links to your music in the show notes for sure, so y
Mm.
and I look forward to your album coming out, that's awesome. Now are you gonna take that are you gonna tour? Are you gonna what are your plans for that?
It would be nice to tour it. I'm just so incredibly beautifully busy. I can't see how that's gonna happen, but if I
Yeah,
just leave it up to the universe, it probably will happen one way or another.
yeah.
And I'm gonna be integrating my music and singing more into my teaching too
Mm,
as, interludes to help people just change state and learn better,
mm,
stuff like that.
mhm. Yeah, yeah, I love that, and you don't have to know the whole road, just know the next step and what you
Yeah.
wanna do with that, that's fun, I like that. I like that too. It's like my I don't know where my stand-up comedy is gonna lead, but I just keep doing it, right? Just
Well, it's a beautiful challenge to have some sort of creative endeavor. If singing, even if you just join a choir, you can sing and have this expression of joy and life with a whole group of other people, and it's all kinds of fun. Now, not all choirs are created equal, and you might need to try 2 or 3 out before you find one you like, but it's a real growing thing in the world. There's
Mhm,
lots and lots of choirs around, and, make some creative art, make a practice of it in your life, and be crap
mhm.
at it for a while, and then you'll get better and better.
Yeah, yeah, it's awesome. It's awesome. So, in both of these things, how have you felt that being older has helped you or been a hindrance in either case? Have you felt like starting something new like either of these things have been made it more challenging or made it easier?
Well, I think having a whole lot of experience has helped. Before I finally went into online business in 2019, for at least 10 years before that, I'd been buying products about how to do online stuff and maybe actually consuming a third of them if I was lucky. But I'd had the thought process about doing this for many years before I finally managed to take the
Mm,
leap. And the other thing, too, is that I think it's important to just be honest that I've had an incredible amount of privilege and support along the way that has helped me succeed so much and so quickly in terms of growing up in a wealthy family and having incredible financial support from my parents and things like that, that a lot of people don't have.
mm,
And that's part of the reason why with our online trainings, we offer part and or full scholarships for anyone and everyone who's in financial distress. We give away a lot of them every month because even though I've had that privilege, I've also had a time when I had 2 or 3 years with chronic fatigue where I couldn't work at all and I had no income, had no money. When I went to try and do the welfare thing, they gave me a stack of paperwork that high, and I
mm.
just couldn't do it. I didn't have the capacity. So my mum and dad supported me, but I didn't have any income and I had bugger all money for a while. So I know what that feels like too.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, I think it's good to for people to know what's possible. I also do think that um, you have grown this business really smartly. When we started, you were really focused in, keeping to a budget and making sure that you were getting the return out of the ad spend we had, and you were really diligent about keeping track of that. And I think the other thing that you even kind of alluded to was making investments at bigger investments as you grow. I know it's scary making a big investment, but I don't think you went beyond where you
No,
could financially go with those
no,
investments, and I think you
no.
had a really good plan and you implemented everything along the way.
Yeah, well, the way that I run my business is I like to have a cash surplus and work from that and
Mhm,
not go into debt and, work to invest to increase the cash surplus to invest in like this investment with this marketing funnel with Peaceful Profits is a
mhm,
huge, huge amount of money.
mm,
Ridiculously terrifying amount of money for where I'm at the moment. But at the same time, they've done this with a lot of different companies, and my web guy has a client who went through their process, and we talked to him, and he said, "Yeah, look, they didn't get quite what they said the best outcomes were, but we'd do it again." So you got to do
yeah,
your due diligence. I
yeah,
looked at another company that does more SEO stuff, and it was a big investment, but it just didn't feel so good on the calls, and they weren't giving
mhm,
us really clear information when we asked for it, so we
yeah,
we didn't go with that, right? You've got to
right,
be intelligent and know your capacity
mhm,
so that you don't overextend and maybe break yourself financially. That's super important.
right, right. For sure. For sure. So, one of the things I like to ask every guest is a quote or inspirational saying. And I know you've got a good one. So, I want to take a couple of minutes to dive into that and what that has meant for you.
So the quote I want to share is one that has come from me, and it came out of my work with animals. And, a large part of the whole energy body balance work has been a healing response to the traumatic and violent things that I saw done to animals when I was growing up. So the quote is, true power requires no force.
That is awesome. And I love how that can apply to animals, to humans, to anything, right?
The best leaders, they kind of lead by inspiration, and people want to work with them, right? There's no force. They're not micromanaging. They're not putting pressure on people to perform better. They're going to people and saying, they might not even say it, but they're thinking about, how can I care for this person in a way that's going to help them bring out their best?
Yeah. Yeah. And that's the same with animals as well, right? You're trying to bring out the best in the animals.
Absolutely. And I
Yeah.
want to work with animals in a way that, I still 1 day a week do clinical work and hands-on week so that I have an ongoing practice of that. And I get some clients that when they turn into my street, their dog goes, "Oh, it's time for bodywork with Dr. Edward." And they literally start jumping around the back seat and barking and carrying on like a pork chop because they're trying to have this work done.
Oh, that's
You
so
know,
cute. I love that.
that's what I want, not with animals I work with, but with the people I work with too, right?
Right, right. Yeah, that's awesome. That is so great. Well, do you have any parting advice for people who are considering doing something like this, maybe starting an online course or, doing something, taking their practice, some in-person practice into an online practice? Anything you'd like to advise from your experience?
Look, I'd say number one, keep honing your craft. Whatever your craft is, or your art, or your practice, or your thing, go deeper, go wider, become more refined and more subtle and more expansive, and increase your mastery over whatever thing it is that you do. And then get out there, start offering some free classes, which can be a way to get you started, right? You learn a lot about how things work and whether what you teach engages with people or not, all that sort of thing. But I think the other thing in today's world is you've got to be active in expressing your story into the world in social media
Mm.
and on multiple channels. You got to get good at telling a story in a way that is engaging. So, if you crap at public speaking, go and join Toastmasters and do that for a year or 2 or 5.
Yeah.
I if if you're afraid of getting on stage, I don't know when you're gonna start doing your, your stand-up classes, but go and do a stand-up class with, do stuff that is terrifying but healthy, I think is a really good way, because business is not easy, right? It takes a continual dedication to growth and to embracing healthy discomfort. So I suppose that's probably the one thing that's changed in my life since my second marriage, which was 7 years with a covert narcissist and left me kind of broken, post-traumatic stress, and a whole lot of stuff. Learning how to embrace healthy discomfort is going to take you further in this life than anything else will.
That's gold right there. That is mic drop gold. So awesome. Well, Dr. Edward, thank you so much for your time and sharing your message with us. We'll have links to where you can connect with Dr. Edward, to your webinar, with your music, all that kind of stuff. And so thank you so much for the work you're doing out in the
Oh,
world.
you're welcome. Thanks for having me.
Yeah.
It's been so much fun hanging out with you here on the
Yeah.
podcast.
It's awesome. All right. Bye, everyone. Hope that was helpful, and make sure you grab the free guide, Top Tools for Late Starters, on the website at latestartersclub.com. And let's turn dreaming into doing.